Hi, I'm Jennifer, and today I'm going to do a bunkhouse trailer comparison video. I'm going to be comparing the J Feather Micro 171BH to a Winnebago bunkhouse model. Now, when we were researching trailers, we were very interested in a particular Winnebago bunkhouse. We were looking at the Winnebago Hike 172BH. Now, this is not the trailer that I'm going to compare today because the Hike 172BH is no longer in production. The Hike line has changed. It still exists, but the Hike 100s, which are the current models, are all much smaller and there isn't really a comparable bunkhouse model. So instead, I'm going to be comparing this model to the Winnebago Minnie FLX 2100BH. You may have heard these referred to as the Winnie Minnie, and even though this wasn't the trailer that we were originally looking at during our research stage, which was now about 3 years ago, this is the most comparable current model, and this is the one that we would be looking at if we were doing our research today. Okay, let's start our comparison just by comparing a few key data points. So first, let's look at the length. The length of the J Feather Micro is just over 20 feet, and the length of the Winnie Minnie is almost 22 feet. So because the J Feather Micro is almost 2 feet shorter, I'm going to give the win for this category to the J Feather Micro. Next, let's talk about weight. So the dry weight of the J Feather Micro is about 3,800 pounds. The dry weight of the Winnie Minnie is about 4,100 pounds. Now the fully loaded weight of the trailers, which is the dry weight plus the maximum cargo carrying capacity, which will be your gear, water, propane, batteries, any extra upgrades that you do to the trailer, all of that will get calculated into the cargo carrying capacity. So the maximum amount of weight for the trailers for the J Feather Micro is about 5,000 pounds, and for the Winnie Minnie, it is 5,500. So these numbers are pretty similar. The J Feather Micro numbers are a little bit lower. The difference between the dry weight and the maximum weight of the Winnie Minnie is a little bit more than the difference between the J Feather Micro, which means you can actually carry about 100 pounds more of cargo with the Winnie Minnie versus the J Feather Micro. But honestly, these numbers are so similar. It is nice that the J Feather Micro has a little bit lighter overall weight. It is nice that the Winnie Minnie has slightly more cargo carrying capacity, but ultimately, these are really similar, so I'm just going to mark this as a tie for this category. There is a slight difference between them, but the weight can change depending on the options on the trailer anyways. So because these are so similar, you could probably find a J Feather Micro that has a dry weight more than the Winnie Minnie and vice versa. So I'm going to give this category a tie. Next, let's compare the tank sizes. So on the Winnie Minnie, there's a 30-gallon freshwater tank, and then the black tank and the gray tank are each 25 gallons. On the J Feather Micro, there is a 55-gallon freshwater tank, and then the black and the gray tanks are each 30 gallons. So on the J Feather Micro, the freshwater tank is much larger, and then the black and gray tanks are slightly larger. So all of the tank sizes are larger on the J Feather Micro than on the Winnie Minnie. So I'm going to give the win to the J Feather Micro for this one. Now let's talk about axles. So the J Feather Micro is a single axle trailer, and the Winnie Minnie is a dual axle trailer. If you remember, the Winnie Minnie is almost 2 feet longer, so it is a bit of a longer trailer, but still, it's rare to find a dual axle trailer under 24 feet. I don't have personal experience with a dual axle, but I hear it's a little easier to tow and it's a little bit safer because if you have a tire blowout, there is an extra set of tires. It's also supposed to be a little bit easier to chalk those tires. Again, I don't have experience with using a dual axle trailer, and we haven't had problems with having a single axle trailer, but I have heard that there are a lot of benefits to that, which do make sense. So I think it's really nice that they were able to do a dual axle model and still keep it under 24 feet. So for this category, I'm going to give the win to the Winnie Minnie. Next, let's talk about the entry steps. So the steps on the J-Feather Micro are very sturdy. They're the step above solid steps that you pull them out from inside the doorway on the trailer, and they go all the way down and touch the ground. So it gives the trailer additional stability. They are nice, large steps. They're easy for the kids to go in and out of, and we really like them. The steps on the Winnie Minnie are the more traditional steps that were the standard for a very long time. They pull out from underneath the door and they just kind of hang there. So they don't go all the way to the ground. They don't add any stability to the trailer. They are easier if you want to hop in and out of the trailer and you don't want to mess with the steps. You could just leave them up. But we've been really happy with the steps on our trailer. We've been happy that they're easy for the kids to use. Nobody's had any spills going in and out. And we like that it adds a little bit more stability to the trailer. So I'm going to give the win for this one to the J-Feather Micro. Next, let's talk about the stabilizers. So the 2024 and the 2023 model, the newer J-Feather Micros, have the same style stabilizer as the Winnie Minnie, which is an improved stabilizer from the version that is on our trailer. It's the quick drop stabilizer, which is supposed to be pretty good. We haven't used it, so I can't really speak to that. But the type of stabilizers are the same on both. But on the Winnie Minnie, the stabilizer is actually a power stabilizer. So there's a little button, a little switch right above it that you can just hold and it will pull it down instead of having to use a drill to crank it down. So it's kind of a minor thing. I mean, we always use a drill for our stabilizers and it's fine, but I think it's pretty cool that they have a little power button right there that you can use to just put the stabilizer up or down. So I'm going to give the win for this one to the Winnie Minnie. Next, let's talk about the outdoor kitchen. So an outdoor kitchen is important to us because we really want to make sure that we're getting the family outside as much as possible. Our goal was to cook all of our meals outside, and the outdoor kitchen really helps make that happen. The outdoor kitchen on the J-Feather Micro is a little different than what we originally had in mind, but it's worked well for us. It's not a pull-out kitchen, but there is a shelf that could slide into the side of the trailer, and we could put a Blackstone right there on that shelf, and that system's worked out well for us. The Winnie Minnie does not have any type of outdoor kitchen. They don't have a shelf or anything. They do have a quick connect, so you could still hook up a grill, but you'd have to have your own stand, your own table for it, your own system, which isn't that big of a deal, but it is nice that you don't have to think about that with the J-Feather Micro. So for this category, I'm going to give the win to the J-Feather Micro. Next, let's talk about the Black Tank Flush. So the Black Tank Flush is a nice feature and definitely something that we wanted in a trailer, and both of these trailers do have it. What it is it's just a port that you could hook a hose up to, and after you drain the black tank, you could put a hose in the Black Tank Flush, and it will help the water cycle around to help get anything off the sides of the tank to hopefully clean it up just a little bit more. So it's a nice feature to have, and like I said, both of the trailers have it. But the reason why I put it on this list is because on the J-Feather Micro, it's on the side where you're already dumping your tanks. But on the Winnie Minnie, the Black Tank Flush, for some reason, is on the camp side. So it's on the opposite side of the trailer where you normally are doing everything for dumping. So that didn't make a lot of sense to us. It seemed like it would be a lot less convenient to have it on the camp side. So for this one, we're going to give the win to the J-Feather Micro. Okay, now let's talk about the interior width. Or we could also talk about slide versus no slide, but I'm going to call it interior width because that's really what it comes down to. Now on the Winnie Minnie, they have a slide. There's a dinette slide, and that is used to help open up the inside of the trailer. On the J Feather Micro, there is no slide, but the interior width is wider, or the overall width, it's all wider than on the Winnie Minnie. So the Winnie Minnie has a 7-foot body. So inside, it's about 6.5 feet. The J Feather Micro has an 8-foot body. Inside, it's about 7.5 feet. So the difference inside between the J Feather Micro and the Winnie Minnie is about a foot, which is much larger. So there is no slide, but it doesn't feel like one is required. So we have space inside without having to deal with any of the extra maintenance that comes along with having a slide. And in the Winnie Minnie, the slide does open up that dinette area, which does give you a little bit more walking space next to the sink, but the area behind that, the slide doesn't impact. Between the bunks and the fridge, it still feels very, very narrow there. Now we do have a wider overall trailer, and I do hear that the smaller the trailer, so having it more narrow, having it shorter, makes it easier to tow. So since this trailer is wider but shorter, the other one is narrower but longer, I don't know that there would even be a difference in towing. I'm not sure. I haven't towed with both of these, so I can't say, but I doubt that it would be that noticeable. And this extra width allows us to have so much more space, so much more comfort in here without having to deal with the slide. So to me, it makes a lot of sense to have the trailer be a little bit wider and get a lot more space on the inside and not have to deal with having a slide. So for this category, the J Feather Micro wins. Next, let's talk about counter space. So the counter space on the J Feather Micro is pretty limited. There's a sink, and then there's a 3-burner stove, which takes up a decent amount of space, but the stove does have a cover on it, which allows it to be completely flat, and it can be used as counter space. The sink did also come with a cutting board that we could put on it to use that as counter space as well, but we don't really find ourselves using that too often. Now the counter space on the Winnie Minnie is great. You still have a 3-burner stove, so that's taking up the same amount of space. And then the sink is double wide, so it would be even easier to fit large pots and stuff in there. And then you have counter space next to that. And in addition to that, they give you a little counter that can pop up, so you can have some additional space right next to the counter if you'd like. Now, of course, the Winnie Minnie is a couple feet longer, but it's nice to have extra counter space with that extra length. And in case you're wondering, that pop-up counter is something that could be added to the end of the counter in the J Feather Micro too. We haven't done that just because it seems like it would be difficult to go in and out of the trailer with it up, and we haven't really felt the need. We just used the kitchen table as additional counter space. But anyways, since the Mini Winnie has so much more counter space than the J Feather Micro, the Winnie Minnie wins this category. Next, let's talk about the refrigerator. So the refrigerators in both of these trailers are very similar. The reason why this is on the list is because in the J Feather Micro, you can have a 12-volt fridge or the gas electric fridge. In the Winnie Minnie, there's no option. The 12-volt fridge is the only choice. And we have heard very good things about the 12-volt fridge, but we really like to have the option to have the gas electric fridge. We like to use the gas option when we're boondocking, when we're dry camping. It uses very little propane, and it's a great way to cool down your fridge without digging into any of your battery reserves. Our battery bank is large enough now that it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but when we first got our trailer, before we did our solar upgrade, it would have been a big deal. Having the propane to cool down the fridge was very important to us at that time. So I like to see it as an option. So I'm going to give the win for this category to the J Feather Micro. Next, let's talk about the dinette. So the dinette in the Winnie Minnie is in a slide. So it's able to be a little bit larger because it is in a slide. So overall, the dinette in the Winnie Mini looks like it is larger than the dinette in the J Feather Micro. But in the Winnie Mini, since it's in the slide, it's boxed in. It looks like it is very boxy. So you have to go up a step to get there, and then that's going to impact the headroom that you have in there. Our dinette has fit the 4 of us, 2 adults and 2 children, just fine, no problem. And because it's not in a slide, it's just more comfortable. You don't have something above your head. It's just the same height as the rest of the trailer. You don't need to step up, step into it. So the dinette in the Winnie Mini, it probably can fit 4 adults more comfortably. But because we haven't had an issue with the dinette that we have, and we like that it doesn't feel so boxy, I'm going to give the win for this one to the J Feather Micro. Okay, now let's talk about the TV, or more specifically, the TV placement. So in the J Feather Micro, the TV is located right near the front bed. And this works out well to see it from the dinette or to see it from bed. It sometimes does get kicked in the bed, so that isn't great, but it hasn't really been a problem. Now, the TV in the Winnie Mini is in the kitchen area. It's right near the sink and the extra counter space. And the placement in this would make a lot of sense from the dinette. You could probably see it from the bed, but obviously it's not as ideal as being right next to the bed there. But the real problem that I have with this is it would get dirty. At the very least, it's going to get splashed from the sink being right there. When we're camping, it's important to me to have the kids help out with the chores, and having them do dishes is one of their primary chores at camp. And they do a great job with it, but there is definitely going to be some splashing, and that TV would definitely get splashed if it's sitting right next to the sink. Plus, just when you're chopping stuff up, it just seems like there's a lot of potential for food to get flicked onto the TV, which I really just don't want to have to deal with. So because of the placement of the TV, I am going to give the win for this category to the J Feather Micro. Next, let's talk about the bunk windows. Having a window in each of the bunks was important to us just because it is a small space. We thought the windows would help the kids feel a little bit more comfortable in there. In the J Feather Micro, both of the bunks do have a window. The window on the bottom bunk is in the storage door, but there's still a window. So that was good. They both have one. In the Winnie Mini, the top bunk has a window, just like in the J Feather Micro, and the bottom bunk has a storage door, just like in the J Feather Micro, but that storage door is solid and there is no window in it. So the winner of this category goes to the J Feather Micro because both of those bunks include a bunk window. Next, let's talk about the bathroom sink. If you've seen any of my trailer comparison videos before, you know it's important to me to have a sink in the bathroom. That's one of the main reasons why we went with this trailer. We loved the layout of the bathroom. Having a sink in the bathroom just really helps keep our kids on their routine. It's easier for them to brush their teeth, and it just makes more sense all around. So in the J Feather Micro, we have a sink in the bathroom. In the Winnie Mini, they do not. This is another area where having a trailer that is a little bit wider really helps out. It allows for the bathroom to have a much better layout, and it allows us to have a sink and counter space in the bathroom. Okay, next, let's talk about electronics. And I'm going to lump all of these electronics into one category. So the Winnie Mini FLX focuses on having a really strong electronics package. So we'll go through some of the big differences with this. So starting with solar, they give you an MPPT controller, whereas in the J Feather Micro, you get a PWM. And if you don't know the differences between those, the MPPT controller is going to charge your battery faster, and it can take advantage of more sunlight than the PWM controller. So it's faster and more efficient. On top of that, the Winnie Mini FLX comes with two 200-watt panels, whereas the J Feather Micro comes with one. And even more, the Winnie Minnie FLX gives you a lithium-ion battery, whereas with the J Feather Micro, it's up to your dealer and no dealer is going to give you a lithium-ion battery. In addition to the solar package, the Winnie Minnie FLX comes with a TPMS system. We added one onto our J Feather Micro, but it's great that it's just coming with one. And then in addition to that, the Winnie Minnie FLX also has a Wi-Fi prep and it has a wireless cell phone charger. Both of those are not included in the J Feather Micro. So the electronics package that comes with the Winnie Minnie is pretty awesome, and because of that, the Winnie Minnie FLX definitely wins the electronics category. Next, let's talk about price. Now, as always, these are very rough estimates. The pricing is going to vary depending on several factors, including where you're located in the country and the different options that come with the trailer. But just to give you an idea, the J Feather Micro 171BH you could find normally around the $30,000 range. The Winnebago Minnie FLX 2100BH you could normally find around the $35,000 to $40,000 range. So in general, the Winnie Minnie FLX is going to be more expensive than the J Feather Micro, but as we just went over, you do get a really big electronics package with that, so you can easily justify a higher price point for that. As I say in all of my Bunkhouse comparison videos, there is not a bad option here. Both are great. We are very happy with our J Feather Micro. The Winnie Minnie has a lot going for it as well. What it comes down to is what is the best option for you, for your family, for your needs. I hope this helped. And if it did, please check out our other J Feather Micro Bunkhouse comparison videos. We compared several different models, including an Ember, a Wolf Pup, and a Geo Pro. So if you're interested in seeing more content like this, please check those out. I'll add a link in the video description below. And if you're interested in seeing any new Bunkhouse comparison videos, please remember to subscribe. Thanks and happy camping!